Okay, welcome to another edition of Crimes Notes. This is topic 1-2, how to evaluate like terms. There is another video right behind this one that is how to combine like terms, which is the back side of these notes. So you will go ahead and do both sets today. What happened is I tried to do it all as one and the battery died on my camera, so I'm having to separate it into two separate videos. So that being said, there are some problems up there at the top of the paper. It says, how do you recognize the commutative property? That's something that if you are to this point, you should already know the answer to. And so I do want you to write in a complete sentence, okay, I recognize a commutative property by blah, 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 blah. And this is personal. Everybody recognizes it a little bit differently, so make sure that yours doesn't necessarily match the person's next to you. And then the same thing here, describe how to graph -3, -11. So tell me how to get to this ordered pair if I start from the origin. So you would put, starting from the origin, I would go blah, 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 blah. So you could put down 5 or down 3 or up 3 or left 3 or whatever you would do to get to this point. Okay, but this isn't something I'm going to help you with. So let's move down. And we're actually going to start kind of looking at the vocabulary for evaluating and combining like terms. So the first thing that you see is a variable. And this is very important because you're going to hear me use the word variable a lot. It's very important in algebra. So we're going to go ahead and put the definition for this one. A variable is a letter or symbol used to represent a number. So typically in algebra we use X, but you'll notice this year I try to use a lot of different ones. So on this front you've got X, Y, and Z, but on the back you'll start to see P's and T's and L's because it doesn't always have to be an X. So it's a letter or a symbol such as pi that is used to represent a number. Okay? And then the second definition is evaluating expressions. The first thing we need to know is, what is an expression? An expression has two or more terms. So this is an expression, x plus z plus -5. And an expression is separate, or not an expression, the terms are separated by pluses or minuses. So that's why this has 1 plus here and 1 plus here. So we have 1, 2, 3 terms. If this were an equation, this would have an equal sign. So again, an expression has multiple terms but no equal sign. An equation has multiple terms and an equal sign. So that's the big difference. So you can only evaluate an expression if it doesn't have an equal sign. Otherwise, you're evaluating an equation. Evaluate means that you should get a numerical answer. Okay? So to put these two things together, evaluate getting a numerical answer from an expression which is multiple terms. So we would say, to evaluate an expression, you will substitute, and again that's just a fancy word that means replace. So we're going to substitute or replace each variable with the given value and then simplify. And we'll run through what that means down here at the bottom. The last thing we need to talk about is what are like terms, and we're not going to use that on the front of this paper, but we will use it on the back. Like terms are terms, and again we already discussed what a term is, that contain the same variables and have the same exponent. So for instance, if I had 2x plus 3x squared plus 3x plus 4x squared. And we were trying to pick out like terms. If we only said it had to contain the same variable, then we would say that all of these are like terms. But the second part says it has to have the same exponent. So that means that the 2x is a like term with the 3x because they both have an x with no exponent, which means it's to the first power. But if we look at the next one, the 3x squared, this would go with this because they both have an x and an exponent of a 2. Okay? So that's what we mean by like terms having to have the same variable and the same exponent. But we'll get more into that on the back. So let's start to evaluate our expressions and see what you can come up with. Gotta fold that so that you can actually see the bottom without me cutting it off on the camera. Okay. So if you notice, I did give you some steps over here off to the left. The first step is to write the equation, leaving blanks for the variables. Then substitute variables with the numbers that are given, and then evaluate using technology. So let's look at the first one. It says evaluate if x is 3, y is -5, and z is -2. So the first thing that I said to do was to, sorry, I'm trying to get my calculator set up and I'm trying to talk and it's not working, so I'm going to stop. All right, so we need to write the equation leaving blanks for the variables. So I'm going to do blank for x plus, leave a blank for z, plus -5 or plus -5. And now it says substitute the variables with the numbers that are given. So if I go back and I plug in, the first blank was an x. Well, up here it tells me x is 3. So I'm going to put a 3 in the blank. Then the next variable was z, and it told me z was -2, so I'm going to put a -2 in the blank. Now I'm ready to type this into my calculator. When I type it in, I'm going to type exactly what I see. So 3 plus -2 plus -5. Now, if you're not sure if it's a minus or a negative, with your Inspire, if I put a minus sign here, it's okay. And in fact, I would always use a minus if you're not sure, because when I press enter here, notice the calculator fixed it and changed it to a negative. So our solution here was -4. Now, do you have to use a calculator? No. Many of you could probably do that one in your head, but if you want to verify that your answers are correct, it's good practice to practice using your calculator. Okay. All right, so let's look at the next problem. Oops, well, if I do that, you can't see your steps. Okay, so first step, write the equation leaving blanks for the variables. So I've got an absolute value. I have a -20. I have a plus, a parenthesis, a minus, and then a blank. And then I have a plus, and a parenthesis, and a minus, and then a blank. And then I close with my absolute value. So now I'm ready to plug this into my calculator. So I would put a y in this blank. Well, y is -5. Yes, I know there's already a minus here, but we were told to put this in the blank. So we're going to put -5 in the blank. Then this is an x, so I'm going to put an x in the blank, and the x was 3, so I'm going to put in a 3. And now it's calculator ready. So we would be ready to put it in. Remember, glare, what can I do? There we go. So if I hold it like this. So now remember, we push this button, let me show you, can't see, right here next to the 9, and that's how we get to the absolute values. And it's in the second row. Then once I have it in there, I'm going to type exactly what I see. Again, I'm going to use a minus, so -20 plus parenthesis, -5, close parenthesis, plus open parenthesis, -3, close parenthesis, and then my absolute value is still there, so I'm going to slide out of it and press enter, and it tells me the answer is 18. So we could go ahead and say that the answer here to if we evaluate that expression is 18. Good. All right. So the bottom two, I'm going to kind of help you set up, but I want you to actually do the math. These are different because if you notice, there's a number next to the variable. So over here where it says hint, I want you to write side by side means multiplied. Again, I'm not going to write it because I'm trying to save time on the video, but you're listening to the video, so you need to put side by side means multiplied. Okay? And so if we were to look at this one and we do our first step says that we're supposed to leave blanks for the variables. But when we're multiplying, instead of leaving a blank, we're going to use parentheses. So that would be another one that you could add over here on the hint, is that when multiplying, use parentheses instead of blanks. So I would do 6, parentheses for the x because we're multiplying, plus 9, parentheses for the y because we're multiplying. Side by side means multiplied. Side by side means multiplied. And then a minus 2. So now you're ready to go back and fill in the blanks and then type it into your calculator exactly like you see it and get a solution. Please be careful. These are minuses, not negatives. So if you put in a negative, you're going to get a wrong answer. So be careful. All right, the last one. Again, notice all three of these are side by side, meaning nothing is in between. And we just said side by side means multiplied, so that means we're going to use parentheses in order to set it up. So I'm going to have a parenthesis for x, a parenthesis for y, a parenthesis for z, and then that's all over z minus y. Well, these are not side by side, so I'm just going to put blank minus blank. So now you're ready to go ahead and put these numbers in that they gave you for these numbers and evaluate this expression. Hopefully that gets you guys through how to do this. Remember, at this point, you need to flip your paper over and open the second video. Good luck, and if you need help, just ask.